I'm Bill Royce, and I come from the Seattle, Washington area. I'm a retired pilot, and I took many pictures in the Air Force as well, and traveling both with the Air Force and also with Boeing. And so I gained a lot of insight into foreign cultures and love to record them on film or on digital media. And I'm really happy to have participated with Leica Society and to be also on the board. Street photography is extremely rewarding. If you get a really nice picture of somebody that you don't know on the street with good expressions in an interesting environment, you end up with a very unique picture that sets it aside from a scenic picture, for example, or a bird picture, or a more traditional photography. So my first tip is to get a camera that is suitable for street photography, and ideally it's unobtrusive. It has small lenses, and certainly the Leica, a number of different Leica cameras that are produced today meet that criteria, and even the old Leica M's and even older models of Leica fit that criteria. They end up with small lenses and ideally prime lenses. The large zoom lenses will not be as unobtrusive for that. So I would recommend the Leica M or the CL or the Q. The Deluxe is another example of a really nice small camera that will end up helping you be successful at street photography. I would say since I've been associated with the M for so long, I've just gotten used to using it and feel very comfortable. The advantage of the M with the optical viewfinder is you can see what's happening outside of the frame while you're looking into the camera, and it enables you to anticipate when to fire the shutter. And so it's a very nice, small, compact package to do street photography. And here's a really good example with a 50mm lens on it. Second tip I wish to offer will be to pick a small prime lens, and I recommend something in the 28 to 50mm range. As you can see here, this is a 50mm lens. It's very small and very easy to carry around in your hand. I would say stop the lens down so that have a nice depth of field to help you with focusing errors that are inevitable because these are unplanned shots in the street photography range. I also would preset the range on or the focus distance on the lens so that it gives you a predictable starting point when you put your camera up to your eye. For a 50mm lens, I tend to use about 10 feet or 3 meters. And for a 28mm lens on the other end of the spectrum of my recommended focal lengths, I would tend to set it at 5 to 6 feet. And the aperture would be set to between 5.6 and f11, depending on how much latitude you want for your exposure. The shorter the lens focal length, the wider the aperture can be and still give you a good range. I also would recommend having the lens in aperture priority, or the camera in aperture priority. then you don't have to worry so much about the exact exposure, and you can correct the exposure later in post-processing. And the last step is to set the ISO on your camera so that you get at least 250th of a second shutter speed when you shoot. And so the ISO, ideally you can use auto ISO and make sure that it's set to minimum shutter speed of 250th, or if you don't feel comfortable with auto ISO, try setting it at 400 to 800 or even higher. And these cameras tolerate noise very well. And the proper shutter speed is very important, because a little noise is a lot less of a concern than a fuzzy subject from subject motion. Okay, my third tip is be ready to shoot. And here the camera is in my hand, and notice I have the shoulder strap wrapped around my wrist because I don't want to drop it, and so it's secure and nobody can grab it out of my hand if they see it. And the other issue with digital Leicas is they tend to go to sleep after several minutes. So if you're in the street photography mode, every once in a while tap the shutter button just to wake the camera up, because you will miss opportunities if the camera has gone into its power save mode, and it takes several seconds, which may be way too long to take a picture. And so if you have the camera around your shoulder, it's not ready to go. Okay, you want to find a good location for street photography. That's really important, because the environment of the subject is almost as important as the people that are in the picture. And people are the most important part of your picture. So you want to go to places that are busy, because then you're less likely to be noticed while you're taking pictures. You want to be in a crowded environment. People are moving, or people are sitting and preoccupied with something else, so you can get pictures, candid pictures. And that sort of brings me to the subject of whether you really want to engage with subjects or you want to shoot candidly. And I prefer to shoot candidly only because you're capturing somebody in a natural sense, and they're not posing for the camera or looking into the camera, and because that's a different person than what they normally are comfortable in doing. So I think if you pick a location with a nice background, that's really an interesting way to handle it also, because it's part of the image. So tip number 5, what is the actual method for success once you've found a good location. And I think it's always good to hang around for a while. And the reasons that you want to do that are several. First, you can observe movement patterns of people and be able to anticipate where they're going to be in, let's say, 5 seconds from the present time, so that you can get set up, maybe pre-focused. If you see people walking by a certain spot on the pavement constantly, and you've got a nice background behind, then focus on that spot on the pavement, so that now you have a fairly precise focus, and you're ready to, all you have to do is, if the camera's awake, is push the button, and you've got an interesting shot. Most of the time, I shoot with my eye through the rangefinder, simply because that's the most accurate way to do it. But there are situations where you really don't want to get noticed because of the nature of the subject. and you don't want to disturb the scene by having them look at you. And so I think I will, in those types of situations, I will shoot from the hip. And I think the trick there is to practice aiming, and obviously a wide angle lens like a 35 or a 28 will make it easier to get a shot, and also be able to correct the cropping and everything else in post-processing. So I've been successful at using both the 50 and the 35 and even the 28 at hip shooting, and it's a very worthwhile to develop that skill. And the way you have to do it, I think, while you're not taking pictures, is practice aiming from the hip to get successful framing. The other thing I should mention is that you want to be easy on yourself, because a successful day of street shooting might only result in one good shot out of 50, or no good shots because the opportunities didn't present themselves.